In our last video, we visited Zion National Park and St. George, Utah. In this video, we stand on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, and visit the George Bush Library in College Station, Texas. In our first episode of this series, we said we were going to count Amazon trucks on our 7,000-mile road trip. Well, today we're going to reveal just how many we saw. We're Richard and Mary. Since retiring in 2004, we've been exploring the U.S. and abroad by car, RV, train, and cruise ship.
Come along with us as we enjoy beautiful scenery and visit interesting and historic places.
Please subscribe and welcome to the adventures of the retired roamers.
After leaving Utah, our next stop was Las Vegas. We've toured the Vegas Strip on previous vacations, so this trip we spent our time visiting Rich's sister who recently moved there to live with her daughter Karen. It was fun to hear Rich and Lavana talk about the family history and the growing up in Oklahoma City. You can see more of our visit with them in part 1 of this series, which focuses on our family visits on this trip.
Leaving Las Vegas behind, we entered into the high desert of western Arizona, and about the only thing you can see is sagebrush. Taking Route 66 into the historic area of Winslow, Arizona, we stood on the corner.
Here's a little trivia for you. In 1971, Jackson Browne was writing the song Take It Easy. To open the second verse, he had the line standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, but was stumped about what should come next. Glenn Frey was sharing a one-room apartment with Browne. Frey was the one who came up with the line, "It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me." Although both Browne and Frey get credit for writing the song, Frey says that is the only line he wrote.
In western New Mexico, we start to see mesas and lava from extinct volcanoes. We're on US 287 south of Amarillo, and we are in the flat plains of the Texas Panhandle.
It kind of makes Winslow, Arizona look like a booming metropolis.
If you recall, there was virtually no infrastructure along this road.
Absolutely nothing. The biggest excitement was seeing the windmills.
We are passing by the Charles Goodnight Ranch. In 1866, he and Oliver Loving drove cattle along what is now known as the Goodnight Loving Trail. To avoid the Comanches in the Texas Panhandle area, the trail first headed to New Mexico before turning north to Colorado and eventually Wyoming. Goodnight invented the chuck wagon, which was used on the first drive.
On the campus of Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, we visited the George Bush Presidential Museum.
George served as a Navy pilot in World War II.
After the war, George and Barbara were married in 1945. After graduating from Yale University in 1948, he and Barbara and the family moved to Midland, Texas, and he began working in the oil industry.
Along with a partner, George set off on his own in 1953 and formed an oil exploration company. In 1966, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives and represented West Texas. Richard Nixon appointed him to be the UN ambassador in 1971. During a break at the UN session, George and I discussed some of the world affairs.
In 1974, President Gerald Ford appointed George to be the liaison to China.
In 1976, President Ford brought him back to the U.S. to become the CIA director. Ronald Reagan selected George Bush as his vice president in 1980. After serving 2 terms as vice president, he was elected to be president in 1988.
This is the gown that Barbara Bush wore on inauguration night. Of course, she wore her trademark pearls with it. Here's the proof that a woman's place is in the Oval Office.
During his presidency, the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. This is an actual piece of the wall.
In the courtyard of the museum, 5 bronze horses are portrayed leaping over a 2-ton piece of the Berlin Wall. According to the artist, the sculpture is about freedom, and throughout centuries, horses have been used by artists to represent freedom.
After Iraq invaded Kuwait, the United States successfully led a coalition of forces in the Gulf War of 1991 to free Kuwait. Later, a Gallup poll showed that Bush had an approval rating of 89%. It was the highest presidential approval rating in the history of the Gallup poll. The 1992 presidential election was unusual in that Bush ran against not only Bill Clinton but independent Ross Perot. In the end, Bill Clinton won the election. After leaving office, he became involved in charity work and became very good friends with Bill Clinton. George Bush died at the age of 94 in 2018.
After we left the Bush Museum, we drove for 2 solid days with high temperatures of over 100 degrees. Needless to say, we were glad to get back to the villages.
On our 3-week, 7,000-mile road trip, we visited family, met new friends, and explored a lot of interesting and beautiful places.
Before we say goodbye, here's the news you've been waiting for since our first video. On the total 7,000-mile trip, we saw 261 Amazon trucks. Yay!
Thanks to everybody for joining us on this trip, and we hope to see you again next time on the adventures of the retired roamers.